No, Todd, not now.
They're just mixing it up, man. Hello and welcome inside the Parc Fermé. Welcome back to the Parc Fermé for podcast number 707 to 707. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we discuss the news of the week, including the news of a brand new race. Oh, what could we be talking about? Well, where to begin? There's so much to talk about. Before doing all that, this is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you here.
I must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we are going to cover the news from this past week. Before doing that, I have to introduce my guest tonight. You know her, you love her. She is my partner in podcast criminality. It is the lovely, the redoubtable Grace. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Todd. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm a little low on sleep. Our family just bought a new 8-week-old puppy, and so like I'm, up every 2 hours over the night, but I am not anywhere remotely close to suggesting that comes remotely close to what my wife went through when we had our 2 daughters up every 2 hours and all that stuff.
So having kittens, what I've discovered is that kittens, and I'm sure puppies too, go through the same phases that children do. It's just shorter, right? Because a cat is considered an adult in a year. So they go through all the same things that kids do, but it's a week. Like, oh, you're not sleeping? I just got to wait a week and then you'll sleep, right?
Yeah.
Like you just go through all those, newborn, toddler, Like I joke that, Levi is like a teenager. He's eating all the cereal in the house. I cannot keep that cat fed, but I know that in like 2 weeks he'll go through this, right?
Yeah, right.
Whereas a teenage boy, that's like 7 years of his life, right? So
it's so funny. Were you listening? Because my wife and I just talked about this before we started the podcast.
That's hilarious.
She just said to me, so I had Buckley, that's our dog's name. It's a little Australian Shepherd with blue eyes. And so I took Buckley outside and I brought him back in, and my wife goes, in hindsight, I'm really glad we did the whole kids first and now the puppy thing, because the puppy thing is a breeze compared to because it would have been the other way. And I said, well, that's right, because whatever he's doing right now, wait a couple of weeks and he won't do that anymore, because in 6 or 8 months, he's pretty much there, He'll be housebroken, he'll be this or that, all this. So
yeah,
it's just compressed.
16 months, he'll be driving. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, exactly, right. So I got, my youngest now is 15 years old, and we're still, working on the teenage angst.
Yes. So I hear you, and they have the, the kittens just have the like sharp claws that just kind of do the poke.
Yeah.
Are you awake? Poke.
Yeah.
No, go away. I'm not awake. It's 2 a.m.
Yeah. I have 2 cats too, and one of them, Enzo and Luca de Mouse Zemlo and Enzo, the black cat, who Enzo thinks it's fun when he gets hungry in the morning. He thinks it's fun just to come in and just lay on my face. He just comes in and lays right down on my face. And if you've ever suffocated by Kitty, that's not fun.
Great.
So I got that going for me.
Yeah.
So I'd like to welcome all of you to the dogs.
I don't know. It's an offering.
The Purr and Paws podcast.
I don't know. Do either of them because Mikasa always just likes to dig her nose in my ear. Like she starts out over here purring, and she just gets closer until she's actually in my ear canal. I'm like, I heard you over there, and I wasn't getting up.
Yeah, it goes and then it's like.
Yeah. Right. I got it. You're hungry.
Yeah,
Too early. Gotta wait.
Yeah, it's crazy. So so we got that going for us. But what are you imbibing tonight? I saw you partaking of a red. It looks like.
Yes. Well, that's usually what I drink. I'm not.
Yeah.
Not really a big white wine drinker. Ooh, I don't know.
Are you wonk already?
Yeah, right. That's the way I prefer these shows, right? Yes. No, white wine drinker. So it is. I believe it's a Pinot Noir from Panson Hall, which is the winery that Paul Charsley pointed me in the direction of. So I believe that's what I'm imbibing. I don't remember the specifics.
Yeah, well, Paul Charsley, not afraid to admit to the world that he is the TPF wine steward.
He knows some stuff. He knows
He
some
is
stuff
the
about some
TPF wine
stuff.
steward.
It's a good person to ask.
Sure. And a glass of bitters, he's all about that.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing.
He does. Shall we talk about some Formula One? Want to do that?
Sure, whatever.
Okay.
Is that why we're here? I don't know.
Yeah, I got castigated
Anything
for
else?
last week for the first 5 minutes preamble. It just, I can't win,
Well, just put a little marker, right? Like they do with commercials on streaming, right? Like just put a little bump there, right? And then start here.
Well, I felt bad. I had to tell the guy, look, unfortunately, we may not be the podcast for you. It's difficult to just sort of like get on the podcast with you because you and I haven't talked since the last podcast. So we're sort of catching up. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's a little difficult to get on the podcast, hit record and go, okay, first up, Formula One, this is it, blah, 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 blah. You just run through the news. Or on the race reviews with Paul, I get up and say, okay, lap one, Lewis Hamilton said a 132.77. It's like, it's just not who we are.
What? Lewis Hamilton couldn't feel his leg, and he still won the damn race. What do we have to do to this guy?
Right. Do we have to remove his leg? I mean, there literally, as you know, there literally is no stopping him.
There is no stopping him.
No. All right, let's talk about some Formula One news.
All right, I'm ready.
Let's not drag on.
Get to the show.
This is the show.
Just wait till that person gets to off season.
I know. Well, no. Well, here's the good news for that person, that there are lots of other F1 podcasts that don't have all this BS at the beginning, and then you can just get right to the news, right to the lap by lap, and that's perfect.
Part of our charm. But I'm
that's
just
right.
telling you, the off season, man. Todd, let's go off the rails. We can talk about whatever we want. Woo.
Oh, yeah. And do.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Grace, let's see. This just in. Breaking news. A brand new race on the Formula One calendar for 2021. That's right.
All right.
You heard it. That's a little weird. I'll get into what I found on Formula One's website. Okay. They announced it, had the story, and just let the story get buried by all the other stories. And there's nothing else really on I mean, if you and I owned Formula One and I just inked a deal on a new race, I would have that pinned somewhere on the website. I'd have
like, confetti cannons.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, right.
Yeah. You'd have it pinned somewhere on the sidebar or something saying, hey, we got a new race.
That annoying scrolling thing at the top, right?
Yeah. So you would think that would be sort of pinned on the website, but it was announced and it just got buried in all the other stories. And it's not even it's not before the fold. It's not after the fold. It's buried. You have to hit read more to go find it.
Doesn't the calendar come out tomorrow?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right.
And this just in by your very own husband.
Yeah.
He just texted you.
Yes, that Vietnam is off the calendar. The calendar that comes out tomorrow, they took Vietnam off the calendar.
You know what I'm thinking?
What the hell?
Yeah, I was just joking that I have my own Huxley living downstairs.
You do.
It's pretty handy.
You do.
He knows way more of the breaking news before I do.
I don't know if that's an indictment of us or an insight to how much he spends online.
It's the latter. He spends a lot of time on YouTube.
Okay.
That's how he knows these things. So.
Yeah. So no, and it said no Vietnam. They've scrapped it for next year.
Vietnam. It is on Autosport's website. So I was able to confirm it with more information than just Flip's YouTube ramblings. It was on Autosport that they are.
So it's legit.
I guess, right?
Autosport. It's legit. So that's weird because why did it say that it was off? You and I were a little befuddled by the
Oh yeah, political. See, I shouldn't have closed it.
We're doing this in real time, folks. This
right.
This is grassroots podcasting right here.
So yeah, Autosport, right? But the race in Hanoi will no longer feature on the calendar, with sources indicating that the race is being scrapped due to ongoing political issues over the race.
What the hell?
Yeah, I don't know. That could
What
be.
is that?
I don't know if that's like internal politics, like the city's politics or the country's politics, or Michael Massey hates those guys now. I don't know what. That's a very political. Could be anything.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is
Apologies
either.
if you know you're out there and
Let
you
us
are
know.
really into geopolitical issues around sporting events. Let us know. But yeah, I thought that was kind of an odd statement.
I don't know, but I mean, I don't know. I'm not a geopolitical expert, but
No, I'm not either.
it seemed like a hotbed currently, but what do I
It
know?
does seem a little weird over there, Vietnam, then.
Mass hysteria.
I don't know what's going on, huh?
Maybe somebody figured out that track not so good, and we're looking at you next, Baku, right? Like, I don't know, Russia, we're looking at you next, right?
It could have been Chase Carey saying, hey, we did these other tracks this year. We don't need Vietnam. Come to think about it, we don't need it. We got
No.
these other tracks that we did this year that the fans really like. So maybe we just, I don't know. Or
Yeah, they just.
I would have expected it to be something like this, that it will not be on the calendar because they haven't paid for the sanctioning fee.
That's right. That's the usual reason, right?
That's what I've assumed. I would have assumed it would have been.
Yeah. So
because it's a hefty amount. It's, I don't know, 20 million, something. I don't know. It's a
Right.
lot.
Crazy. Multiple kidneys. Yeah, I think that, and maybe they, I don't know.
Maybe
We'll have to wait to see.
Maybe they're just not in the mood.
Maybe, but I think, like you said, maybe they were like, well, I was keeping Vietnam in orbit over here. Oh, but Imola, or any of these other,
Imola.
Portimao, okay.
Portimao.
Wouldn't that be
Yes.
easier than having to deal with a new track of Vietnam that's a
Sure would. Hint, hint. Nod, nod.
Yeah, right? So,
Right. I agree.
for sure.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. Well, we're losing that race, but we're gaining another one.
Okay.
We are going to gain the Saudi Arabian night race for 2021. Now, here is what the Formula One official site said. It said, the 2021 F1 calendar will feature a brand new race in Saudi Arabia with news that the city of Jeddah will host the inaugural Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in November 2021. The event will see the world's best drivers, and constructors, fair enough, do battle on city streets on a spectacular night race. The 2021 race, the first in a long-term partnership between Formula One and Saudi Automobile and Motorcycle Federation, or otherwise known as SAMF. Did you get that?
Yeah,
SAMF. SAMF. Did you get it? Got it. Will take place on Jeddah's Corniche, which runs along the banks of the Red Sea, wasn't that parted? The Red Sea, providing a stunning, a long time ago. It's gotten back together.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
It's made it back.
Just checking. Providing a stunning coastal backdrop for a full weekend of 2-day weekend or 3? I'm just asking for.
We'll get to that, right?
Okay, fine. Yeah, all right. Of live motorsport, entertainment, and culture. That will take over the second biggest city in Saudi Arabia, end quote. Okay. So that big announcement, everybody's excited. Got a new race, Saudi Arabia. That's awesome. And then Amnesty International says, okay, that's a bunch of BS. So Amnesty International came out and said that this is concerning. It's just another attempt of what they call sports washing. And for those of you playing at home, what is sports watching? Sports washing, not sports watching, sports washing. Like washing.
Washing, yeah.
Washing your hands, that kind of thing.
Washing, right.
Yeah. Sports washing, or if I was from the Midwest, I might say washing.
Washing, sports washing,
right.
yes.
But I am in the Midwest. I was born and raised, and I don't say wash the clothes. Sports washing in the hosting of a sporting event or owning a team as a means for a country to improve its reputation, particularly if it has a poor record in human rights. All right. So Amnesty International being very heavy with that, they said Formula One should realize that a Saudi Grand Prix in 2021 would be part of ongoing efforts to sports wash the country's abysmal human rights record. And this was Felix Jakens. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm gonna go with it. I'm going to go with it's Jenkins instead of Yakins, but who knows? The failed attempt to buy Newcastle United obviously hasn't deterred the Saudi authorities, who apparently still see elite level sport as a means of rebranding their severely tarnished reputation. Despite the fanfare over Saudi women finally being allowed to drive a car without being arrested, the authorities have recently locked up and tortured several leading women's rights activists, including I would butcher that name, so I'm not going to attempt it. So apologies. I'm not trying to marginalize this comment. It's just that being an American, I just destroy names when I try to pronounce them. Let's see. If a Saudi Grand Prix goes ahead, at the very least, F1 should insist that all contracts contain stringent labor standards across all supply chains, and that all race events are open to everyone without discrimination. Amnesty asked for support from the sports stakeholders. In the lead up to the race in Jeddah, we would urge all F1 drivers, owners, and teams to consider speaking out about the human rights situation in the country, including by expressing solidarity with jailed human rights defenders.
Okay.
So, what would seemingly be an announcement for F1, I doubt they walked into this deal not at least anticipating they get a little blowback.
Oh, they knew they'd get blowback.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did. So, because Grace, in fairness, you and I have talked about this before.
So this came up with Bahrain, right? It continues to come up with Bahrain. Right, and China. But I didn't realize there was a term for it. I should have known there was a term for it. But I've mentioned this before, right? It's the same reason why cities host the Olympics. There's a reason. It's not to make money. Nobody makes money off of the Olympics. You lose money hosting the Olympics. Now, Formula One race is the same, right? So you either know you're going to lose money off of it, or somebody sold you some great, property, right? Somebody really ripped you off, right? So knowing that you're not going to make money off of it, then the question has to be, so then why do it, right? Why host the Olympics? Why host a Formula One race? It is because it ups your brand in one way or another. I'm not saying that every country that holds a Formula One race is trying to up its brand because of its human rights issues in its country, but there's a reason. You're trying to demonstrate that you should have a seat at the table. That's why you have a major event like this, because you're able to say, well, I hosted the Olympics. Y'all didn't have a problem with that, and I was able to pull that off, and everybody was safe, and there was a lot of infrastructure, so why don't you let me do this, or why don't you bring me into this, right? I liken it on a personal level. I think everybody's had that. You work on some organization-wide team to do some grandiose thing. You may not want to be on the team, but it ups your brand, right? Because then people are like, oh yeah, Todd, I remember I worked with that guy on the whatever campaign where we did this thing. Oh yeah, I remember that guy, right? So it's a quick way to kind of get yourself known around an organization and seen by management, and helps you, climb the corporate ladder, if you will. So this kind of serves that same purpose, but you always have to ask that, because it's never for the money. Nobody makes money off this. So I just didn't know sports washing was the term. But yeah, we've definitely talked about this before.
Yeah, we did. We talked about Bahrain. And we even, mentioned at the time, there is that element that you just described. Mm-hmm. And if that was not the case, there have been plenty of, I would say, what we call emerging markets.
Right.
That have sought F1 races. Mm-hmm. And I think in Malaysia is a good example.
I think that's another prime reason why you do it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if emerging market and location around the world is looking for an F1 race, it adds or lends a legitimacy to them as a nation that can host major sporting events and those kind of things. So if that's a truism, mm-hmm. then certainly you would think other nations that maybe weren't emerging, quote unquote, mm-hmm. would host these races for similar reasons. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're Saudi Arabia and you live there and you're a Saudi that loves racing and you want to see Formula One there, and it has nothing to do, it may not have anything to do with sports watching. It's just that you would love to host a race. Why would they do that? Well, because Aramco is already a major sponsor
everywhere.
Of Formula One, and they're investing millions in the sport, mm-hmm. right? So that's what Amnesty said. Now, this is F1's response to this. They said for decades, F1 has worked hard to be a positive force everywhere it races, including economic, social, and cultural benefits. Now, that's an interesting comment.
Okay.
And I actually would argue that a little bit, and I'll tell you why in a minute.
Okay.
Sports like F1 are uniquely positioned to cross borders and cultures to bring countries and communities together to share the passion and excitement of incredible competition and achievement. We take our responsibility very seriously and have made our position on human rights and other issues clear to all our partners and host countries who commit to respect these rights in the way their events are hosted and delivered, end quote. Now,
Okay.
I find that interesting because it's a slightly different position than all of those decades they mentioned under the leadership and ownership of Bernie Ecclestone, who had always said that the sport of F1 was apolitical and it didn't engage in the social issues in those countries they visit. And you know, when they went to Russia or when they expanded to different locations like Bahrain and stuff, and that was brought up. And Ecclestone was very clear to say that we're apolitical. We're not getting involved in that. This is a completely different position from the new owners of Formula One, and one that I think actually is pretty far-reaching, or at least committing themselves as this sort of force for cultural, social, economic benefit of these places it goes. And, you know, if I was at Amnesty, I'd say, well, could you provide us information on other places you've gone, like Bahrain, where you've been an economic, social, and cultural benefit?
Right.
Right. So I think they've kind of, in their altruism, in their statement, I feel like, to be honest with you, kind of writing a check with your mouth that you can't cash with your butt a little bit.
Right. And I do think that, yes, I mean, I think that sports often don't think anybody's going to take them up on that offer, right? That's what I agree with that, right? That they're saying this now, and we're just hoping that we bury the story and nobody will remember that we ever talked about this, right? Like, I mean, we still have races in other areas that are politically problematic, and we still keep having races there, right? So, what teeth is there? I also think the landscape of the Middle East is dramatically changing, and I think that's part of where Saudi Arabia's suddenly, I mean, because that's the other thing too, like, why now Saudi Arabia? It's not like you suddenly rolled into the lottery and now you know what I mean? Why now is also you've had all this time that you could have done it with, had a race with Bernie, unless you've been working on it and it just, like you're like Miami. I don't know. You're the Miami of the Middle East. I don't know. That doesn't seem right.
Right.
Yeah,
it's an interesting take. It's you bring up a good point about changes and those kind of things. Certainly,
because I do
the
think
recent peace treaties and with Israel.
I'm just saying, right?
Things.
I read The Economist. That is the closest I get to any sort of like geopolitical knowledge. I'm just merely saying that it's not a coincidence. None of this is a coincidence. It's way too much money to be a coincidence. And I do think, right, the peace treaties, everybody's relationships with Israel, kind of the workings of the Middle East have really, really changed. And I'm sure that Saudi Arabia is changing as well, and kind of looking in different directions than it might have before. So,
and different investments,
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting avenue, but one that they could have always pursued. So I think that would be interesting to look into. But I think that, not just Amnesty. I think there's a lot of eyebrows being raised, and I think that Bernie's apolitical statement just is a way. It's kind of just the same thing, right? It's a way to, keep the ankle biters, the noise, right, kind of down, right? This is the same kind of statement, right? Like, there's no teeth behind this, right? At all. And there's no real teeth behind Bernie's apolitical statement. It was just a way to kind of like quell the noise and let me do what I want to do. So they're just saying, oh yeah, see, we love people and we do all these great things for them. I also love the statement that they're like, while they're committed to respect these rights in the way their events are hosted and delivered, what about the like 364 other days of a year, you know, right? Like, oh, congratulations, your race weekend, everybody will be great. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's sort of a weird statement too. But again, I don't think there's any teeth behind it. I have no idea what those words mean, except they sound like some nice word salad that some PR person came up with. And we all go like, ooh, synergy from a thought leader. And we are like, oh, I'm in. And we buy your software, right? So it just sounds nice. And that's what Bernie does too. Bernie just went more like the hard-fisted, like, you know, I know what I'm, you know, shut up, I know what I'm doing. And Liberty Media goes more the like, well, let's all, you know, sing Kumbaya kind of angle, but it's really serving the same purpose, which is we're going to do this anyway, and we're going to pretend like we're going to do well by people, and we're not. And it's about money.
So it's kind of interesting. So, of course, this news breaks, and then, you know, when any news like this breaks, what do you just instinctually do?
I called Jackie Stewart. No.
You're very close. You call Toto Wolff.
Oh, see, you're right. He is the new Jackie Stewart.
He is the new Jackie Stewart. So Toto, who is now officially the default voice of F1 and F1 teams these days.
It's because he's tall.
Yeah, he's got he's tall, dark hair, handsome looking fella. Mm-hmm. Yep. So
nice accent. Yeah.
Nice accent. Yeah. Yeah, exactly what I'm thinking. So I think so. They reached out, so they got a hold of Toto, and he said, "Get down." No, actually, he didn't. He said, "Sports should unite and help us to get to a better place." I mean, if you didn't have enough altruism by F1 statements, this gets even better. So it says that help us get to a better place. We've seen that us racing globally, there was a positive discussion around F1. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. I've been in Riyadh for Formula E. I think it was a year ago, and I was impressed by the change that I've seen. As a visitor, you never know how things are going, but what I've seen personally, that's the only comment I can make, because it was a great event and no segregation, women and men in the same place enjoying the sporting event. We need to start somewhere, and what I've seen is that it started somewhere, and I believe that we should do whatever we can to make the world a better place. It's a wonderful statement.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
There's that.
I mean, I don't know okay.
Now, as I mentioned, you know, we've discussed this before about Bahrain, Russia, China.
Sure.
And we've had the same conversations we're having now. We're very close to it. You know, Bernie used to say, you know, we're apolitical. Now, that was often met with derision because some fans would argue that, well, wait a minute, Bernie, the whole apartheid thing in South Africa when you boycotted the race, not so apolitical.
No.
Right? So not so true. Now, it gets better because Lewis Hamilton weighed in on the issue.
Oh, okay. All right.
You know, you know, this is tracking exactly where it would go for an F1 journalist.
Right.
Anytime there's something you want to know, you call Toto Wolff. If his number is busy, you immediately call Lewis Hamilton. Right.
Right. Okay.
So Lewis, who has led an effort this season with anti-racism, weighed in on the issue of a race in Jeddah, saying that basically he said he didn't know enough, or he said, didn't know enough about the human rights issues that's happening in Saudi Arabia. I have some friends that go there and tell me it's a stunning place, but I think it's important that before I really comment, I know exactly what the issue is. Nelson Mandela, many years ago, said sport has the power to change the world for better. And I think we've already seen the positive shifts that we, as a sport this year, have committed to and started to push in the direction of supporting human rights and equality and inclusivity. The current fact is we go to all these countries, and while it's a great event, we don't leave a long-lasting positive effect on those places. So that's kind of exactly contrary to what the F1 thing said. The question is, can we? Can we be a part of bringing attention to certain issues and push them to change, end quote. It's very interesting when you think of all the efforts that Lewis has been doing this year
right,
on anti-racism and those positions. trying to, as he would say here, trying to be part of bringing attention to certain issues and affecting change on certain issues. Will he do that in Saudi Arabia, considering that in 2016, he caused a big stir with with several human rights organizations when he showed up in the Bahrain paddock wearing full traditional dress. He had a white, Dastasha gown on and traditional headgear. And I wonder how he or other drivers might react to Amnesty's call for support during this. Is this something that he would feel compelled to do? I think, it's kind of interesting that he said, he just wasn't aware of Saudi Arabia's human rights record. One presumably would say, well, he's been racing in Bahrain. On the flip side of it,
right.
There's a hell of a lot of money in Formula One by Abu Dhabi, by Bahrain, by Saudi Arabia, and that equates to millions and millions of dollars of investment.
Yeah, I don't know enough is like that wouldn't take very long to answer that question, right? Like I don't this isn't like
you could Google that one.
Right? Like I don't think it's unknown. I don't think that my thought is when I saw that there's going to be a race. I mean, first of all, when there was a race in Riyadh in Formula E, I was like, really? And now this one is like, interesting. Like, I don't know anybody who was just like, oh, like as if it was a race in Miami, like, okay, that's great. Track's going to suck, but okay, let's add it to the calendar, right? I think that people at least have some sense, much like Bahrain, things aren't right there, and that maybe we should have a bigger discussion about this, or China or Russia, right? And so, I don't know, but I do think it's hard.
Was it a couple of years ago, Grace? Do you remember when the F1 press was running the big story about the woman from Saudi who test drove a Formula One car, and she was celebrating the fact that they had just allowed women to drive?
Yeah.
And I remember saying at the time, as much as I absolutely appreciate that story and her getting a chance to drive a Formula One car and celebrating for her that cultural victory, right? The F1 press was going on and on about how awesome this was, and she was given a opportunity, and because women can now drive, and I'm thinking, it's a weird take on that thing, because as much as that is a victory, they made it sound like it was a really big, great, wonderful thing, which contextually in her world, it is for sure. But on the flip side, I'm thinking contextually, globally, is it?
Yeah, I think, it's
weird, but anyway.
I think you have to be careful how much weight to put on a thing like that, right? Like, like people always are quick to say, oh, we're post something, right? Well, yes, we can make progress towards something, but it doesn't mean we're post that something, right? Like, so yes, race relations in the United States have changed, and they've changed over this last year, especially, but we're not post racist. But we can make progress towards that. And so I see where something like that can be progress, but it doesn't mean we're, post something. So there's still a lot, again, geopolitically, that is not right between our relationship with Saudi Arabia and a lot of other countries' relationship with Saudi Arabia, that I think it raises a lot of eyebrows that this is happening now, and that Formula One's trying to play it in this, like, we're here to like they're the Red Cross with four wheels. I don't, like what can you do? Well, then maybe Mr. E's right, and you should just be truthful and just say, yeah, we're just here. They gave us some money. We're going to run this race, and we're going to leave. We're not going to care about these people anymore, because I don't care about the people at any of these racetracks.
Yeah.
I don't care about the people of Montreal. I don't care about the people of Austin, Texas. I just run the race, and then we go on to the next place.
Yeah, it's a difficult and it's a delicate thing, because you're melding sport and culture and politics and ideology in a lot of ways. And it's a very difficult thing. When I read that article about the test drive, I was thinking, as much as there's one side that should be celebrating that, on the flip side, it's a sad reminder, because I have pictures of a great relative of mine at the turn of the century in 1900, and she was driving around in her electric car. that she just bought. She was driving it, around. So, contextually, it's very difficult, to juxtapose, and I get that. And I guess maybe that's what I'm saying about this race in that sense, when you're juxtaposing this with other nations and other cultures and other ideologies and societies and politics, it's a very difficult thing. And in that case, I think Bernie was saying, you know what, we're just apolitical. I'm not going to get involved in
I'm
this.
just sports.
Yeah, I'm just sports.
Racing, right.
We chose to hold a race there because they paid for it.
Right, just like anybody else does.
Just like anyone else does. We do it in America. We did it in Russia. We're doing it in Bahrain. We're doing it in Saudi because they paid a bunch for it. And that's the reality. And they're investing a bunch in the sport. But I'm not down there getting into the long grass on the ideology, the religion, the politics. And that's how he did that. Now, F1 has really put a stake in the ground about what their impact is that I think is auditable by people like Amnesty International. And I think it would be difficult to uphold that. But, I'm not advocating one side or the other. I'm just trying to look at this as a balanced.
I do think, just looking at it as two ways of approaching this, right? And I do think that, right, Bernie Ecclestone, I always think it's hilarious anytime that FIA or Bernie Ecclestone says, oh, we're apolitical. You've never been apolitical, but I like that you're just going to tell us that. Like, I've never noticed, right? Like, oh, you're right, Brent. You're not. You're the Formula One. You're like a super political entity here amongst yourselves and with the teams and everywhere else. So, okay. But, it is the easier route, right? It is easier for me to say, again, I just show up for 3 days. I put up my tent. We do our thing. I leave in 3 days. What happens before I'm there? What happens I'm there? After I'm there? I don't pay attention to. That's on you guys. That's definitely the much easier route. But is it the morally right route? Is it the best route? It's a route, and it is the easiest route. And I think that's why a lot of entities would go in that direction, because to even say that they're like, oh, we're here to encourage whatever they said, culture, whatever, where's the
social,
economic, social, cultural benefits. Well, what does that mean? You're really just here to like sell your brand and sell some,
race and get a paycheck.
Kimi Räikkönen deodorant samples, right? Like what exactly does that mean, and how are you going to do it? And I think you also have to be careful the flip side too, that their culture is not my culture. So I don't want to say your culture's wrong, right? And same thing with Formula One, right? Like this isn't a, again, I think that's a line too, right? So how do you have this event?
Yeah, I think it definitely is in that sense. There's a element that it is called, in this case in Formula One, it is called a, quote, host nation. So they're hosting the series, and you're going into that culture, that nation in that sense. And to play the other side of this, look, if you're the Saudi authorities and you're looking for other areas to invest, whether that be in sporting teams, sporting venues, sponsorship, like with Aramco, with Formula One. These are significant, really big investments for them.
Right.
Aramco, significant corporation that's doing the work that they do, or there's other corporations they may want to sponsor or buy. On the flip side of that, it's one thing for us to look at this and judge this on what has been versus what you alluded to, which is change. And to what Toto was saying is that he went to a Formula E race in Riyadh, and it was wonderful. They had men and women all enjoying the racing and all that. And look, if the Saudi authorities are saying, we get it, we understand some part of that, but look, here's what we're trying to do. We're trying to invest. We want to bring Formula One here. We understand Formula One's stated position on these issues, and we're committed to making sure that the event is treated within those sort of mores of what Formula One stated a position are on these issues with regards to discrimination or segregation or whatever it might be. So in that sense, maybe this is like you said, it's an opportunity to change. It's an opportunity to bring Formula One in and be a catalyst, or at least to honor Formula One's position in these issues. And if they do that, then
Mm-hmm.
that's probably a good move.
Yeah, so I was just looking quick because I don't know anything about the failed attempt to buy Newcastle United. I don't know what happened there. That would also be some interesting research for me to do post podcast. I don't know the backstory, but obviously if Amnesty International brought it up, there's something story there.
Yeah, there's
right. And that,
there, yeah.
and whether it's just that they're trying to get the attention of anybody, it's kind of like Driven. Wasn't that terrible racing movie that they tried to get Formula One to do? Right. So it's like they're driven. They're just going from race series to race series or sport to sport until somebody will say, all right, Saudi Arabia will let you have our event in your country.
Right.
Which is what that sounds like to me, but I don't actually know the backstory there about why that's an issue. But I think it would be interesting to work with organizations like Amnesty International to talk about what this means, because there are people that have boots on the ground every day, not just the F1 circus that comes in and comes out, but it can't just be, buzzword word salad. It has to be something you're really going to stick behind and stand up with if you're going to say stuff like that. You can't, people should hold your feet to the fire and ask you when you come back in 2022, so what have you done since 2021 when you were in Saudi Arabia last? Of course it's going to be great. I mean, Toto Wolff was like, it was amazing. Of course, I mean, I've been to several F1 races. I've never been like, boy, this place is a dump. That's just not what happens. And going to Abu Dhabi, what it was like at the track was not the same as what it's like in the rest of the area, right? Especially in the length of the shorts of the European men. But yeah, I guess if you never leave the racetrack, I guess it's just like all you can eat resorts, right? In like Jamaica or the Caribbean or somewhere, right? Like you can be in your hotel and it's great because you're not actually out in the countryside with the people that live in that country that your, circus is a part of. So I think it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, because we still race in Bahrain.
We sure do.
And,
we'll see.
Yeah, so it will be interesting to see. And really, the track is what I'm kind of intrigued to see.
Well, of course, right? There's that side of it too. Like, I'm just like, do we need another street circuit? No. Can somebody we just went to like 7 new tracks or 7 tracks that, Flip sent me the meme and it's like the last time they raced in Imola and it was like George Russell was 5 and
5,
right? And Norris, or I guess they're older,
10.
Right? Yeah. And then they're like, Kimmy came in 5th. I'm like, God damn, right? Like,
right. Yeah,
exactly, right? So I don't need another street course. We were just at like all these tracks that we haven't been to in, 15 years. Go to those, right? Why do we have to go to another street course? But
we have Singapore.
That's enough, right? Like I get also why people do street courses because that's where the people are, right? I've said this before too, that we went to the Baltimore Grand Prix, an IndyCar race there for the 3 years. It would be much easier for me to say to my friends, hey, let's drive up to Baltimore for this race, right? Even if they just come up Saturday, because that's when all the better racing is happening anyway. And, we'll just watch this and it's like $10 and come and we'll eat some food and we'll hang out in Baltimore, right? That's a lot easier than like, we're going to drive to the countryside of Western Maryland and you're going to drive for 2 hours and we can only camp because there's no hotels nearby, right? Like that's a hard sell. So I get it that it is better for the hosts to have it in a city course because then the people will show up. And especially if it's not going to be a long-term thing, you don't have to bring in the anoraks in order to get people in the stands. But as a fan, I would always much prefer not another street course.
Yeah, you can catch those casual walkers by like Toto Wolff.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. Well, it'll be interesting. We'll see what happens.
We'll see.
The next thing up this week was the 2-day race experiment. I wrote a piece on the website about this. The Emilia Romagna Grand Prix was a test of the 2-day. This is a test. This is a test of the emergency broadcast of the 2-day format. If this were a real race format, no, but this is a test of a 2-day racing format in which the teams were denied any Friday practice session in favor of just a single 90-minute session on Saturday morning prior to qualifying. Now, the experiment was met with mixed reviews. Now, let's start with Grace's team, McLaren.
Sure.
We had Andreas Seidel, who said, it if it's something that could also help us save running costs and would help us also to spend less time away from home, especially for our mechanics and engineers, it's something we will be positive about it. End quote. Now, from that perspective, you got to admit it's difficult not to see the benefits of cost cutting, lowering your running costs, and more time at home and less travel expense for the mechanics and the team, right?
Right, but don't they, I mean, okay, I'm just putting, so if we're racing in Italy and I live in England, why would I really fly all the way home to England for 2 days and then fly back to Italy to go to another race for 2 days? Like, it definitely saves cost for the team.
I don't know how they do it.
Does it really help? I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem like a very long break.
Especially when they have these back-to-back triple headers.
Right. Like, so I mean, that sounds really nice. I don't know. Is that really what would happen? It makes sense at Silverstone, right? If most of your staff live in England or, Italy, it would make sense, for Imola, for the two Italian teams to, have a break like that. But I don't know if you're in, China, if you run a 2-day race in China, are people flying all the way home and then coming back? I don't know. That's not something I would do, but.
Well, that's what he said. Now, on the other hand, Racing Point's Otmar Zafnauer.
I was going to say, I would not argue with Adrian Seidel. I also not argue with Otmar Zafnauer, whatever they say. What do I know?
There you go. Well, he said, coming into this weekend, I was completely open for it. I thought I was going to like it. But now I've got this uneasy feeling that it's not right and not Formula One. I think it's got to be from a fan's perspective. Do the fans like this kind of format? And ultimately, that was my question of the editorial piece that I wrote. As I mentioned on our last podcast, I personally do not like the 2-day event at all. The entire concept of a race weekend for me is to see F1 cars run as much as possible, not as little as possible. Right. And in short, denying teams measurable data via runtime during 3 practice sessions is, in my opinion, a construct that attempts to solve for a series that has reduced its entertainment value due to over-engineered solutions. And I feel like that's what this is trying to do. And I would much rather watch Friday's practice and watch Lewis try to find the limits of every single curve, or every turn. I love that. But anyway, Grace, what did you think about the 2-day race?
Okay, so I'm not for it. I think we discussed this before because one of the races, accidentally had 2 days, right? Because it rained. And somebody's yelling at me right now because they know what race that was and I don't remember. But I mean, that's one thing when it happens because of rain or other circumstances that you have a 2-day weekend. But I think as somebody who's gone to races, the 3-day weekend is what you want. I agree with you. Plus there's other support races, which is what I brought up too, right? Like, I don't know how much support races are running during COVID time, but during regular time, there's you literally can be at the track from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and something's racing. It's like the rodeo. Somebody's doing something and you should be watching it, right? It's not just Formula One on a given weekend. But I also think that, Friday is when you can do recon. It's when you get to different parts of the track. There's nobody there. You can really see more on a Friday than you can come Sunday when you just have to sit in your seat and you're all packed in next to each other. So I just don't think from a fan perspective that they would want 2 days. But if practice is so pointless, I don't see how that's possible either. I mean, just moving everything to Saturday, they must get data off of it. I guess if the teams really feel like Friday is not valuable to them, I guess that's one thing to discuss, but I don't know that I really believe that either. I don't think the teams really find Friday as completely valuable because then they wouldn't run. Right. I mean, especially, okay, so if you look at Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, or maybe Mercedes, Red Bull, they still race on Friday. If Friday was so unuseful to everybody, then why would they bother?
Why would they bother? They wouldn't.
You wouldn't put the mileage on your parts, right? So Mercedes is still out there soon. That'll be right again. It's like I finally got to like daylight savings time and my clock in my car is finally right again, right? So close that those words are going to go back together again. But Mercedes wouldn't race on Fridays, right? Mercedes could totally be like, no, we'll just see you on Saturday.
Yeah,
Whatever.
right.
And I mean, I guess
Right.
they get the practice by moving it Saturday morning, but again, I don't know how that works in a regular time, because there would be something racing then, whether even it's like Ferrari Challenge or whatever, GP2 or whatever is racing then. It would mess up your schedule. I don't know. I just think it's a bad idea. I don't know why people think this is a good idea.
I don't either.
Except that it's supposed to save money somehow, and I think that's never going to happen.
With the hybrid engine, aren't we well beyond that?
I don't know. They're just going to spend somewhere else. I don't
will.
know.
Well, that's what they said. Well, we'll just buy more simulators then.
Yeah, I mean, Fernando Alonso's all over that. So
yeah, right.
Which I also thought was a hilarious comment that he made too. That he was like, nothing. Some things haven't changed at all at Renault since I was here last, and some things have really changed. Like when I was here last, they didn't have simulators. That's right. You've been in the sport so long that something didn't exist, and now it does.
Now it does, right?
That's crazy.
It's great. Let's see. In other news, Pirelli, they have an 18-inch dilemma. Pirelli is concerned about Paul, don't go there. Pirelli is concerned about being able to run a full 18-inch Formula One tire test program next season in preparation for the 2022 rule change. Now, the program was to test this year with 25 mule cars at Fiorano, Bahrain, Barcelona, Red Bull Ring, Silverstone, Suzuka, and Paul Ricard, which was going to include 5 days of wet running. Yay, sprinklers!
What, were they really going to, like, how were they going to do that?
Well, the sprinklers at Paul Ricard. They have sprinklers.
Oh, okay. Because they use, like they do it like, GM test courses or BMW.
Yeah. Fiorano has it, I think, and Ricard.
I just wanted to be the corner marshals with a garden hose. I'm going to stick with that. or like the kind that go like this, like you had when you were kids, like, and you ran in them because they just went like this, right?
Yeah,
so,
right.
Or slip and slide. Somebody's slip and sliding in the infield.
That's good.
There's way more ways this could be more fun than just,
I could see standing there like Cousin Eddie, holding the hose, standing there at the corner.
And you're like, they have to put their finger over the edge of it so they get some pressure when the cars come around.
Yeah, right. So anyway, that was now Pirelli boss Mario Sola said this. He said it's going to be very difficult to fit 25 days of testing in next year's calendar. We know for sure that we're going to start the season with COVID restrictions still in place. As soon as there is a draft of the calendar, we will try to put some days in it. One option, for example, is to try to use as much as possible the Tuesday and Wednesday after events, so staying on the same track. Right. This minimizes the movement of the teams. We have to consider the quarantine. We still be in place, moving from one country to another, this kind of stuff. We'll try to be very clever and flexible plan for testing, but it is clear that without testing, we cannot produce the 18-inch tires, so we have to find a solution. It's not easy, but we'll do our best. Together with the teams, we're going to try to introduce a calendar for these criteria. You can imagine the challenge, as Ricard's the only circuit outside of Fiorano that has sprinklers, but there's no race at Fiorano, right? So Ricard would be the more logistic or logical place. So it's going to be very difficult to measure that against existing data if you did try to do something at Fiorano. So that's difficult. But in the end, if they don't get through COVID early in 2021, then the testing program will not be at all what they planned, and one wonders what impact that might have on the 2022 season with the 18-inch tires. So keep your eye on that.
Well, wouldn't it okay. I assume that would affect the whole car though, right? Like it's not like
because the car's designed around that.
Right. You know what I mean? It's like the engine. Like we always talk about like, oh, if the Honda engine sucks, why don't you just get a Renault engine? Well, it doesn't work like that, right? They come in a box and you just pop them in like IKEA furniture, right? The car is built around that part. So if they're not going to have 18-inch tires, I assume that's going to have some knock-on effect to the way the rest of the car is designed. Even if it's just, the direct parts that come in contact with the wheel. I can't imagine that you can just be like, just kidding. We're just going to stick with, I don't even know how many inches the tire is now. What, 17, 16?
13.
13? Wow. Okay. Definitely. 13 to 18 is a big difference. I'm assuming that you really have to adjust your car to fit that. So, if you're not going to do 18, you're not going to be able to just go, that would be hilarious looking there, right? Because it would be like this tiny little go-kart wheel and this giant, housing for it, right? So there's more to it than just, if we get to some point in 2022, like, guess what? Teams are just not doing it because they've already designed the cars at that point.
Right.
Because everybody's preparing for 2023, right?
Otherwise, then we're back to 13 inches on 2022.
Right. So problems all around there.
Yeah, they got to fix that. Got to figure that out. Got to do it pretty darn quick.
I think
find a test place. Might I recommend? It's there for the taking, Mario.
There you go. And you don't have to run all of them on a wet track. Just 5 days on a wet track.
Right.
So just make them do a back-to-back of Paul Ricard, right?
Right.
Be fine. Instead of going to the A1 ring twice, we'll just go to Paul Ricard twice. Problem solved. Get all your testing done in between.
Yeah. Problem solved from your end. All right.
Just give me a call. Pirelli,
Done
we
with
got
that.
this. Glad to see you listen to the show, solving all your problems.
All right. Next up in the news, let's talk about team radio, shall we?
Okay.
You might recall when Lando Norris weaving a blue streak about Lance Stroll, and then he had to walk that entire thing back, right? After facing social media backlash for his comments about poor Lance.
I want it now. What's the matter with those swaps down there?
So you may even recall another driver having a similar incident.
Yes, the young Dutchman was a bit annoying out there today.
Max Verstappen offending the Mongolian government, which prompted a formal condemnation from them. And he had to walk that back as well after he made those comments over the radio. Mm-hmm. So what better person to answer this issue than the head of the GPDA and a frequent flyer on the YouTube driver radio shame playlist than one Romain Grosjean. He's a prodigious talent.
He sure is, that Romain Grosjean.
Yes, he is. So here's what Romain has to say. First things first. Mm-hmm. Why is it broadcasted? The cockpit and the radio to your team is your own environment, and I don't like the radio message being broadcasted. Imagine if you were broadcasting what's going on the football pitch. I think it's more fruity and colorful. You can't always speak your mind. You need to respect people. We're not perfect at it, and I'm not. I'm far from being perfect at it. But also, you have to bear in mind that we drive in a car at 330 kilometers an hour, and pushing it to the limits. Well, some of you are, Roma, pushing it to the limits and knowing that there's risk involved. It's not like if I was sitting on my sofa having a nice glass of red wine and commenting on what's going on from outside where it looks kind of easy, end quote.
Okay, so no cricket.
Woo!
Those words. So when you're under duress, much like when you're drunk, you will say things that you say, just not out loud in front of people in public, right?
Right.
And so if you're using words, they're in his vocabulary. I get it that you're in a stressed environment and you feel that you shouldn't be broadcasted from that stressed environment, but those words are in your vocabulary. I mean, this is the same discussion we had over the NASCAR driver, right? That I can't remember his name because I don't watch NASCAR, but you know the guy that was fired and then rehired when everybody stopped talking about it. But you used a word that is clearly something you use, and because it came out of your mouth, right? Like it just rolled right out of there. So these are words that Max Verstappen uses, and that not only the Mongolian government found inappropriate and offensive. And so I think that it is possible that it's broadcast. I mean, you could bring that up as a question too, right? I mean, that comes up with any of the drivers. Like, why do we hear, they get to, it's like reality TV, right? So the FIA or whoever's in charge of the radio broadcast gets to paint the picture, right? So they only can show you the Lewis Hamilton that all he does is complain about his tires.
Right.
I'm sure that in the course of the 8 million radio communications that Lewis Hamilton has with Bono, they aren't all about him complaining about his tires, but those are the ones that get put forward. And then they create a narrative that he just whines about his tires all the time, right? So there is production value to what comments go forward. But I think that all Max Verstappen can say is, yeah, I shouldn't have said those things. I was under distress, but it was wrong. And rarely that is ever what anybody says. They just go, oh, I was under stress. Well, those words came out of your mouth. You use those words. Even when you're distressed, that's, I know who you are, I guess is what I'm trying to get at, right? I know what your stripes look like. So just say you're sorry and move on. But if you're not willing to do that, then people know who you are. And
So my answer to this is this.
No more radio. The rest of the race.
well, that would be fine too. I think that, you know, they swear all the time. That's fine. Nobody seems to have a problem with that. I mean, there's clearly
They do?
How the that's possible?
Or really?
Look, the only rule is it has to be in English, right?
Right.
Unless you're Ferrari, and then you can say some things in Italian, but everything's just supposed to be in English. That's the only rule. So,
Right.
And it's always a big emotion.
but I also think that because of social media, things can get so blown out of proportion that we miss the important part. We get so like, well, everybody's just right, but we've missed the important point is that he used words that he shouldn't have, and we should have a discussion about that, right? And Max Verstappen should decide how he feels about what he said and have a discussion about that or not, just like that NASCAR driver. But sometimes the like, all of the like, I don't know, I'm making, you know, anybody that's listening to this radio now can't see the hand gestures I'm making, so I guess you should watch our video feed. But, you know, people just get so mired in the like back and forth and I think social media just really adds to that. It's like talking heads on a political show, right? Like people get so distracted by the like yelling that they miss the underlying point that's important. And so I think, you know, maybe it's a bit extreme in this case, but I do think that there's a moment where we need to take a break, take a deep breath, stop with the like social media blowing things out of proportion. But in the point of that, don't just dismiss the whole thing. There is an underlying issue here that needs to be discussed, even if it did get blown out of proportion on Twitter.
Yeah. It's like this.
Bring the cow back, man, please, Pastor.
I mean, the reality of it is Pastor had trouble bringing a car back in one piece.
He sure did.
That is a discussion we should have.
That's right. So I guess my advice is people don't get so distracted, worked up by social media that you miss what's important.
Right. Because otherwise, yes, right. I agree.
And that Roman Grosjean, other people are going that fast, but I'm pretty sure it's not you.
Right.
Because why would I miss?
Well, he didn't go that fast because he's on the radio is going.
Cheap, lying, no good, rotten, four-flushing, low-life, snake-licking, dirt-eating, inbred, overstuffed, ignorant, blood-sucking, dog-kissing, brainless, dickless, hopeless, heartless, fat-ass, bug-eyed, stiff-legged, spotty-lipped, worm-headed sack of monkey shit he is.
There you go.
There you go. And if he said all of that, that would be the greatest radio communication ever. But I think that, and he'd have to be in a McLaren. Maybe that would be funnier too. An old McLaren, not their current incarnation where they're doing pretty good. But
Right.
I think too that, you know, I also just want to get the dig in on Roman Grosjean because we only have 4 more races. I don't even know. What is it? November? Yeah, we only have a couple races left. So, and Roman Grosjean doesn't have a ride for next year. So I got to get those digs in where I can. It's like Pastor.
He said only one other driver called him when that was announced.
Oh, that he didn't have a seat?
Yeah.
So he's like the opposite of Pierre Gasly. Whereas like everybody was like, oh, Pierre Gasly, he's the greatest guy. He's my best friend. I love that guy. Like everybody loves that guy. But you know, Roman Grosjean,
Yeah.
not so much.
Yeah. That's kind of, you know.
Did he name who was it Kevin Magnussen? Who was the other driver?
I'm assuming that the article didn't. I just didn't have a chance to read it. I'm assuming that the article did say who that was.
I don't know. Who is Roman Grosjean's one friend? I don't know.
That's a good question.
Sergio Perez? I don't know.
It could have been. It was probably K-Mags. Hey, did you get axed?
That's what I'm saying. Like, was it Kevin Magnuson? That's
right.
the only person I could think could call him.
Did you get axed? Because I just got axed. Yes, we both got axed. That's BS.
It's like, when the VPN is down for work or the printer doesn't work or something. Like, did you print that? Did it work for you? Like, you go around to everybody's office to figure out if it was just you that has the connection problem, right? I think it was Kevin Magnuson was the other person.
I think it was. I think Kevin Magnuson called him up and said,
Help! I'm being repressed!
That's what it was. All right.
That's right.
Let's give away some awards because that's what we do. The first award of this podcast is Post of the Week. All right. Post of the week is going to Andrew Page. Andrew weighed in on the 2-day event thing, and that was an interesting comment. He said, unfortunately, I feel that as the current regulations stand, with penalties added to cars if parts break, it really doesn't matter how many sessions are allowed. You could let them have 10 practice sessions, but the teams would only do a set number of miles per race weekend pre-calculated on how long they think they can push the parts and their expected lifespan. So it's a good point.
Yeah.
To bring up, because you're right. You could have unlimited running over a weekend, and they're only going to do X amount because they want to put too much mileage on the components.
Or do the cost cutting measure where they're going to give Williams, more wind tunnel time. Meanwhile, Williams wind tunnel is 4 guys on the corner of a box that just moved George Russell like this. Like, what is that going to get them? Nothing. Right? So,
right. That's their simulator. They have a little desktop projector showing it, and they got George Russell in a box and 4 guys, the guy on each corner shaping the box, shaping the box. This is pretty realistic, guys.
Well, you better hope he doesn't spin out because that's going to be really rough on those 4 guys.
Yeah, it would be.
But let's give Williams more mileage. That's
could be on remember the AV cart in school? The box could be on top of an AV cart, so when he spins, they could just spin the AV cart around.
Spin him out. I think that'd
be perfect.
You totally fall off the top. How did you break your leg? Well, in the
fell
simulator.
Off the AV cart.
Oh, that's terrible.
Damn it! That was the best daylight cart we had.
It's true. It's true. Poor George Russell, man.
I know. Poor Jorge. All right. Next award is Grace's favorite because it is the Lewis Hamilton Fashion Award.
Lewis Hamilton, there's no stopping him.
It's an Lewis.
Lewis Hamilton, there's no stopping him.
It's an Lewis.
All right. Well, Grace, I have to read you something.
Okay.
This week's winner is the newly launched Formula One perfume.
All right.
Yes, I'm going to read it to you. The championship first signaled its intention to develop a fragrance range at last year's season-ending Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. On Monday, 5 different unisex perfumes. 1, Precious Metal, METTLE, get it? Turn 1, Overtake 320, Neon White, and Carbon Rain.
Now, I will point out that when we discussed this the first time, I thought rain was like RAIN, rain, not like REIGN, rain. And I was like, Carbon Rain, that's a terrible name. Like, watch out, man. That's a lot of clouds falling from the sky.
The shards. Watch out for the shards.
Right. Like, why would somebody want Carbon Rain? Like,
right. That's not a good idea.
Red rain, purple rain. Like, I don't know.
Carbon Rain.
Carbon Rain. Who wants that? I don't know. But then you corrected me that.
Yes. Well, these were unveiled by championship organizers as part of the engineered collection.
This is
now, I just want to throw this out, guys. Now, I could be the only male on the planet that this happens to, but I've smelled those unisex things. Whew. I pick it up and I'm like, oh, dude wouldn't wear that. No way. And I have to think that the women are doing the same thing on that unisex. Like, okay, that smells like a dude. That's not working.
Yeah, right? I guess that's been my experience. Usually when it's
it smells like a dude. So I don't know. And if this is the pinnacle of engineering motorsport, Couldn't they have just made a men and women line? I don't know. So anyway, I
Right, you're
could be
going to
wrong.
charge a gazillion dollars for it anyway. At
Well,
least make them their own line, right?
It's interesting you say that because I'm going to tell you what you're going to start. The fragrance is created in conjunction with designer parfums are
Yes.
contained inside, Grace, a 3D printed, get this, stay with me here,
Okay.
exoskeleton structure meant to resemble a Formula One chassis. Are you kidding me? Now get this.
I got to look at a
And
picture.
It,
No part of me thought that looked like a chassis.
yeah, I didn't think so either. It looked like a space frame chassis, maybe. I don't know.
Looked like something out of
You're like, what is this, Fangio's perfume? So anyway, I get this.
Mm-hmm.
It's in that carbon fiber key fob area.
That is,
It retails at 195 pounds for a 75 milliliter bottle.
okay, first of all, this picture, it makes it look like a bourbon bottle, right? Like how Maker's
It
Mark
does.
has like the red wax
Yeah.
stuff on the top. It
Yeah.
looks like they just melted that red wax stuff all over the whole bottle.
Right. Yeah, it's hold that
There's
up to
no
the camera,
description
Grace.
of what these
Hold
smell.
that picture up to the camera, your
Oh,
camera, Grace.
you know, this is always a bad idea, right?
Yeah, it is a bad idea, but people can see it.
Okay, there you
There it
go.
is.
Unless
See?
you're just listening to us.
Yeah. People looking
Uh-huh.
to listen and driving their cars say, "Oh, that's brilliant, guys! Brilliant!" Yeah. Hey,
Thank
hey, do more of that hold up to the camera thing.
You know, I will say that I do this a lot. So you think by now, right? I've been working from home 100% for what, like 7
Mm.
months now, right? You think I'd be better at this? I still do that. Like I'm pointing at the screen. Like, why can't people understand what I'm talking about? Like this sentence right here needs to be fixed. Oh, right. None of
Yeah.
you can see what I'm pointing at.
Right.
That's not going to really work here. So I still have that problem, even though
There
this
you
is
go.
now my primary mode of communication with everybody I talk to. You know, you think I'd be better at it, but I'm
That's
not.
it.
So
All right.
I just think these, well, somebody needs to do some research. We need to get somebody.
Well, I'm going to tell you, if anybody's
Lovely.
going to drop 200 pounds, 200 quid on a bottle of perfume, I'm thinking Charsley's the guy to do it.
Gosh, he's definitely a turn one kind of guy.
He is a turn one kind of guy. He is the
Maybe
kind of
overtake.
guy that could pull off a unisex perfume.
Mm.
You know,
Mhm.
he's got that international flair to him, Grace.
Well,
You know,
that's right.
he just blends in wherever he goes.
Yep.
You know, Calcutta, pff, where's Paul? Can't tell. He blended in. Really? You're out in Jakarta? Can't tell. He's blended in.
His use-
Vietnam?
his-
Yeah, Paul blended in. Can't
Okay.
see him. He's international. And by the way, he's wearing turn one.
That's
And
right.
tomorrow it's overtake 320 because he's going to be down in Malaysia.
Right.
He just blends in, that guy.
Wow. That's, yeah, not since the key fob, which I think is still my favorite bit of Formula One merch that,
Yeah.
that's something.
Sure is something. So I got that going for us.
All right. All right.
All right. And finally, we hand out the Steiner Bravado Award. Oh, yeah.
That's not my kind of place.
Okay, Grace. I'm giving this to Chase Carey on Formula One's
Oh.
$115 million operating loss.
Oh.
Lost $115 million.
After
Now,
maybe the clone wasn't the best idea.
yeah, maybe not. He's probably sitting there with a calculator going, okay.
How much
wait
did
a
we pay
minute.
for this?
How much did we pay that designer to create this crap?
This is a terrible idea.
And how much we charge him per bottle? 195? Screw
enough.
that. That's got to be about 400 pounds a bottle.
Yeah.
Come
Not
on.
enough.
It's like I've got to do the math around here. Do we
Right.
not have accountants?
Right,
I'm
what
out
are
of
you
here.
people doing?
Dominicali can manage this.
It's right. It's Stefano's problem now.
It's Stefano. It's
No.
Stefano to you.
I'm not, Stefano is not right. I don't know. It's a hard habit to break. Where's this been? I mean, it literally, he was.
Is that a Peter Cetera song?
Unintentionally. I was also going to point out
What
that
other podcast can you listen to and get a Peter Cetera reference? Come on.
I only
I'm
wish I
working
would've
my
planned
ass
that.
off over here for you guys.
I will also note that I do sing the Lewis Hamilton song to my cat since his name fits the song. So, and he's a kitten, so that means that, you know, they tear ass all through the house all the time at all wee hours of the morning. So the Lewis Hamilton, there's no stopping him, totally works.
Good.
But yeah, Chase Carey. Okay.
Yeah, so here's what he said, and I just found this interesting. So, you know, the NHL, NBA, baseball, that was all overlapping and competing for eyeballs and all that kind of stuff. And attendance was down, no attendance in stadiums.
I was going to say, attendance was down. There's nobody there. It's
well,
zero.
attendance has been down this year. I wonder why. Because the doors are locked.
That year.
So anyway, he did say this about F1, though. It lost 115 million large. And he said that the lack of cheering fans in the stands at F1 races has had far less of an impact on TV ratings for F1 races than in arenas for pro hockey and basketball games. It's always an issue to broadcasters looking for protection from streaming and other broadcast options and competing products is what he's talking about. And he says they're looking to expand their streaming capabilities to reach more regardless of butts and seats at races, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's kind of interesting that he's out there really doubling down on that F1 streaming program that sits and spins through the entire race for me, which is a delight.
Great.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's just interesting because we've often talked about, you know, in the past with Bernie's like, I don't really care if I put butts and seats to this thing. It's all about the broadcast money, man. It's all about the TV viewers.
Well, and I think that's true for all sports, but
Yep.
I mean, I think that the other thing is most race fans, how many races do you go to in your life, right? Let alone a season, right? I mean, same thing with MotoGP. I started watching MotoGP. I have only ever been to one MotoGP race in my entire life. So, I mean, clearly I watch something that I don't go to, and they don't play in my backyard like the Wizards do. So I've been to more Wizards games than I have Formula One races because
it's locality and scale, right?
Right. There's only 3 relatively near me. So
there's NASCAR race tracks all over America, but that's just in America.
Yeah.
So generally people live somewhat near one.
But even at that, it's still only once a year, right? Because even if maybe twice a year, right? It's not like, again, the Wizards always play at the same place unless they're away, right? So half their season, a little more than half their season, is always going to be in my backyard. I can go to those games. But even if I live near Darlington, they only race at Darlington once. So I don't even know if they still race at Darlington. That's how long it's been.
Oh, they do.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
Hey, Chase Elliott won the championship, didn't he, this weekend?
Yes, I had heard that. And,
congrats, Chase.
Yeah.
Chase is a longtime listener of the podcast, I'm sure.
I'm sure, and at least I know who that is, right? But yeah, I haven't really followed NASCAR since.
And Scott Dixon won the championship in IndyCar, right?
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah, congratulations, Scott.
Yeah, right on.
Big longtime listener to the podcast, I'm sure.
Him and Tony Kanaan. They love us. They love us.
They're like this,
guys, right? But so nonetheless, but even at that, there's only one race near you, right? So you still have more ability to see a NASCAR race in the United States than you do a Formula One race.
Correct.
But you know, I think you're going to always, it would have to be that way with motorsports, or motorsports wouldn't thrive, right? Unless you happen to live near a local dirt track of some sort or something like that. We can go watch late modifieds every weekend or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, you just aren't seeing high level motorsports because they move. They don't stay at one place.
Yeah. So it stands to reason. I just found that interesting. He's like, you know, people are no people at the race, whatever, man.
Who cares, right?
We're making good money on TV. Good enough.
I do hope that this never, all these sports on at the same time was very hard. I realized that people were like, oh, what shows are you watching, right? Because again, you know, we're all inside, so people are watching a little more TV than usual. And I'm like, I haven't watched anything new. Oh, right. Sports. That's all I'm watching, right? That's what sucks up my time. So now basketball's over, at least until Christmas. So it's a little bit easier now.
There you go.
To get through everything I got to get through.
Problem solved.
I know, right? I lead a busy life.
Yeah, you do. Let's do some mailbag.
You've got mail.
Anthony A. asks, hello, Todd Paul. Great
hello. All right.
Hello.
Hello.
To get my eye in for Istanbul Park in preparation for the Turkish Grand Prix. Let me try that in English. For the Turkish Grand Prix, I wanted to watch a past race, but didn't want to look up suggestions since they're usually accompanied by why the race was good and who won.
That's a good point.
That takes a significant portion of excitement away. Without giving it away, could you recommend which Turkish Grand Prix I should watch? That is a great question.
Man, this is why I should have read all the way through the notes. So I just read like the headlines and get a little information, do a little research, so I'm ready to have some conversation. I did not read the mailbag. I don't know, but
I have an answer for
there you go. Talk amongst yourselves. I will find an answer.
Anthony, for me, it's 2010.
Okay.
So watch the 2010 race.
All right.
It was a good race.
I don't know. I liked Turkey. I thought it was a good track.
Yeah, turn 8's fun, you know.
And it will always make me think of Lewis Hamilton singing at the opera. So,
right.
You know.
Flying over the Turkish Grand Prix.
Yes.
And turn 8, which I think at the time they termed Diabolica.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, look, right on cue. Hey, Levi.
Is Levi.
That's right.
Of the tribe Levi. Of the Levites.
Oh, come here.
Go.
Come say hi to the folks at home.
Say hi. There's Levi. Look at Levi. Everybody's like, oh, yeah. Do more of the camera. Show us the cat stuff for this podcast. Brilliant idea.
We're going to like bookmark it. Oh,
I know. All right, folks. Well, that does it for this podcast. A huge thank you to our Patreon supporters and to Skip Williams and Kingsbridge BCP. Now, folks, do not forget your Fantasy GP picks this weekend because Skip is coming. He is coming and hell is coming with him. All right. So you've got to up your game. Don, I'm talking to you, buddy.
That's right.
Got to up your game because there is no stopping the Skipster. All right. So you gotta really up. He's past me. He just blew right past me. All right. So we've got to keep Skip from taking a second championship. If he keeps this up, he'll be like the Lewis Hamilton of the TPF Fantasy GP.
That's
right?
it.
So anyway, get your picks in. Don't forget them, Charsley. Got to get those in.
I had to hire Flip to do it.
I know. It's just it's crazy. So anyway, but a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters because we would not and actually could not do this without you. And if you like the podcast, go over to iTunes, give us a good review, give some love over at iTunes, and you can share your opinion. Just go to theparcfermé.com and share your opinion there. Just do it with decorum and civility. I try to get to social media comments and stuff like that, but I don't always get to those, like on Facebook and stuff like that. So apologies, but I always definitely try to get to the comments on our website and read those. So anyway, do that. And then we'll be back next week to do this all over again with Paul, hopefully reviewing the Turkish Grand Prix. So until next week, when we do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long, Grace.
See you in a couple weeks.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.